Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to build a SharePoint self-service that helps users to request and then automatically create SharePoint sites. For that service I will use Microsoft Form, Power Automate or Logic App, and then I'm going to show you how you can automate the entire mechanism and process. Before to start, let me briefly thank iSpring. iSpring Suite is a set of tools that helps users to create a compelling and effective learning experience producing professional training material. Stick around and stay tuned because I will chat a little bit more about it. Now, let me start and let's see how to build a SharePoint self-service. Let's get started. I am in SharePoint. I have this communication site called Cockpit. I will use this site to store every request in order to create new SharePoint sites. Now let's start to click on the New button and then List. I will click on Blank, SharePoint Sites Request. Let's click on Create. I'm ready to create additional columns in this list. I will keep the title, then I'm going to add another one, which is the reason. Let's click on Save. Then I'm going to add a choice field, and this will contain the status of the request. I will add Create, then In Progress, and completed. Of course, I will add also approved because I'm going to implement an approval workflow. Let me click on Save, and now I added this additional column. The last one that I'm going to add, it would be a person column because I will store the owner of the site. And here we go. Let me click on More Options. Allow multiple selection, it's fine. So let's click on Save. So now my basic list is ready to go. It's time to build now a form in Microsoft Forms. Here, of course, it's the choice, it's totally open and up to you. I will select form because it's extremely fast to build up a form, but you can use Power Apps, SharePoint Framework, or any other custom web application that you want. Now let's click on the waffle menu and then let me click on Forms. This dropped me on the office.com launch forms, and then I can start to create this form. Let's click on New Form. Now let's add a title here, SharePoint Sites Self-Service Request. Then let me add here a text. The user has to add the title. This is required. Let's go for another one. And this will contain the reason of the request. Request reason. Then let's go ahead with the last one, and this will be always a text. Owners require this as well. And my form is ready to go. I can add additional information like description. So let me add more info in this form. Here we go. I added some description here. This self-service will allow you to request the creation of a new SharePoint site, title of the SharePoint site, explain briefly the reason of the request, and the email address of the owners, example, Grazia. And this is my email. I will add another one. Here we go. I added also this sample how to add multiple owners. And then let me set a time just to make this form a little bit nice to see. Let's go with this one. Okay, the form is ready to go. I can start to use it. Now, every time that a user submits a request, this will trigger a Logic App. I will use a Logic App and I'll explain you later why, but of course you are totally free to use a Power Automate flow. Here I am on Azure, portal.azure.com. I'm going to click on Resource Groups and then I'm going to click on the button Create. I will create a dedicated resource group for this kind of service. SharePoint Sites Self-Service. I'm going to change the region here. I'm based here in Germany, West Central. It makes more sense to use resources that are more near. Then let me go ahead and let me click on create. Here we go, the resource group is just created. I can move forward by clicking on the create button, and here I can just type logic app. I can see here the result, logic app. Let me go for it and then create again. So here I have to provide additional information. This is the resource group, the logic app name, SP self-service workflow. I'm going to opt for a workflow. Then the region again, I'm going to set Germany West Central. The plan is gonna be consumption plan. That's it. It's ready to go. I can click on review and create. Now that the deployment process is completed, I can click on the button go to the resource, so I can jump in the logic app designer, and here I have to start to select the trigger that I want to use for this logic app. But let me start from scratch. I will select blank logic app. Okay, I type it here in this text field Microsoft Forms, and I have exactly the trigger that I want to use when a new response is submitted. Let me click on this one, then I have to sign in and provide my credential. In this case, if you have a service user to orchestrate all your workflow, it would be a good option. But I will use my personal account to orchestrate workflow in my tenant. Here we go. Now I performed the login. I can start to select the right form that I created before. Let me just scroll a little bit down, and here we go, SharePoint site self-service request. Let me select this one, and then I can move to the second step. Now I have to add an additional step to get the result of the form. Then I'm going to select the action Microsoft Forms and then get response details. This is extremely important in order to read what the user has submitted. Let me target, of course, the right form, which is SharePoint site self-service request, and then the response ID. Let me use the See More button in order to find the list of response notification response ID, unique identifier of the response. I'm going to select this one, and now I have all responses provided by the user. So I can start to save this information in SharePoint. Now I selected the action SharePoint, and then I can select the action create item. Of course, I have to perform the sign in here as well. I already have done this previously, so the credential is stored in the cookie of the browser, so it's easy to reuse it. And now let's start to target the right SharePoint site. It is the cockpit site. The list, which is SharePoint sites request, and then let's start to add some parameter. This is the reason, status value, owner claims. Here we go. I have the title. I'm going to target the title of the form, then the reason, request reason, status value, and this would be create, and finally the owner claims. Now here, to save properly multiple owners in this field, I have to create a variable. Let me select the variable and then initialize variable. This will be owners, and this would be an array which will contain all owners passed through the text of the form. Let's add here a function. I'm going to split, and I'm going to use as a separator the semicolon. So then I'm going to add a split. Then I want to use owners as a field coming from the form, and then I can add the separator, which is the semicolon, and then I can close. Let me click on OK. Now with this function I will split every owner contained in the text field of the form, and I can use later this owner. So let's create now for each. I'm going to go through every owner. I'm going to use the for each as I mentioned. I'm going to target the owners. Now I need another temporary array where I'm going to append every claim. So let's click on add and then variable again. initial variable. This is another array, and I will call it owners claim array. And here we go. I can also change the name. It's a good approach to change and rename every action or every step. This will facilitate the way how you can read the flow. Owner's claim. Yeah, there we go. Now then in the for each now I can use the variable built in, and then I can use the append to array variable. I'm going to target owner's claim, and now here I can use the current item. Now to build properly the claims and to add a multi-person in the SharePoint field, it's necessary to create a JSON, and here I'm going to add claims, and then as value I'm going to add the current, let me scroll a little bit down, current item. So here we go. I'm building now the JSON that I will reuse in the step forward in order to save all owners in the multi-person field. Let me expand this. Now that I have this one, I can add every element of the array to a compose, for example, which will be available outside of the for each. I can type compose here, for example, and the proper action will show up. Here we go, compose. And now I'm going to select owner's claim. Now that I have the compose, I can reuse it in the step owner claims. I can add now the outputs, and now even if I have one or multiple owners, it doesn't matter, because this JSON will be added in the owner claims field, and in this way I will have multiple persons saved in the proper SharePoint column. Here we go. Now the data are saved. In the next step, I'm going to create a simple approval workflow where responsible of this process has to review the request, approve or reject. In Logic App, there is not the classic approval action. Then we have to use Outlook if we want to send an approval request. Office 365 Outlook, and then send approval email. Here we go. Sign in again here as well. I can target the user that I used before to perform the login, and now I can start to target the person who is responsible. Now I added me, the responsible of this process that has to approve or reject the request. And let's see what other field I can add. The body for sure, and this will contain a recap of the request. Here we go. I added something in the body that will help the approver to figure out about the request. And then I'm going to create, clicking on control, built-in, and then condition. Now I'm going to check the selected option, and if this is equal to approve, then we can start the creation of a new SharePoint site. But before to do it, let me set the status in the SharePoint list as approved. Update item. I'm going to set always the same SharePoint site collection, cockpit, SharePoint sites request, then the ID, which come from the previous step, create item. The title, which is required, would be the same. Then I'm going to add only the field that I want to update, and it is the status value. It's approved. So now I'm ready to start the creation of a new SharePoint site. Here I can use my SharePoint admin to perform this action, but this is not really the best practice in terms of security. As alternative, what we can do here is create an app-only permission. So basically we are going to create an app in Azure Active Directory, and I'm going to provide access in order to consume the REST API of SharePoint. I'm going to show you how you can do that. Here I am in portal.azure.com. Here I can handle the Azure Active Directory behind my Office 365 subscription. Now I'm going to create a new app in the new app registration blade, and here I'm going to grant permission to a specific app. Now, to create a new app in the app registration blade, you have to click here on the left pane, app registrations, and then on new registration. Here you can type the name of your app principal. I called it SharePoint Self-Service. It will be a single tenant service, and then I can click on register. Now, first thing to do is to take the tenant ID. This is very important. We will use this parameter later. I have here OneNote open. I will paste the first important parameter. The second one is the application ID, also known as client ID. And this is important to consume the SharePoint REST API later in my Logic app or Power Automate. Another important parameter is the secret. In the section Certificates and Secrets, you can generate a new client secret. And we have to do that. Here you can type the name of your secret. I will be very original by typing in secret, and then I will specify 24 months or validity for this secret. Let me click on add, and now be aware that you have just this time to copy this value of the secret. Later will be no longer available and you have to create a new one because there's no way to retrieve and get the secret value. Okay, I added now this to my OneNote. I can move now to the next part, and I will leave the last step later. I will come in a bit, certificate. So now we have the secret, and let's specify the permission. In the permission, I'm going to click on add a permission, and we are going to use and consume the SharePoint REST API. So then I have to select SharePoint, and this will be a service that will run with elevated privileges. Then I have to choose application permission, and finally sites full control all, because this permission will allow my service to create new SharePoint sites. Now let me confirm it by typing and clicking on the add permissions. And now as a global admin, all I need to do is grant and consent this permission for the application. I now provided my grant consent, and now let's go with the last step. Let me go back on certificates and secrets. And here I can add a certificate. Why I need to add a certificate? Because if you want to authenticate towards the SharePoint REST API, you need an app ID, tenant ID, client secret, and a certificate. Without a certificate, you are not able to consume the REST API. Now I'll show you how you can create a certificate, and then I'm going to upload it here in this section. Then we will go further with the form, Microsoft form, and we will test the entire process. How to get started in order to grant access to an Azure AD app. Here there is a very nice documentation that explains how you can create a certificate, a self-signed certificate, and then add it in Azure. I will put the link in the description of this video so you can follow this documentation. Here you can find also a PowerShell script which is useful to create the certificate. I'm going to run now this PowerShell script so we can see together how this certificate will be created. Now, I have here on my Visual Studio Code the script already available here. All I need to do is just run this script and provide some parameter. Now let's create this certificate. I will run this command line as example. I will take it and then I will add my parameters about command name, start date, and end date. Alright, I have now as command name SP self-service, start date, and end date for the validity of this certificate. Now confirming I have this already located in my local certificate store. Then I have to change it. Let's call it SP App-Only service. Let's confirm. Now I have to provide a password, and my password will be this one. Let's confirm, and here we go. Now 2 files are generated under this folder: SP App-Only service, PFX, and SER. Now I can copy and paste the password on my OneNote. I already added this. And finally, we can upload the certificate that we need in Azure. Let's do it. I am back on Azure.com, and this is my app principal SharePoint self-service. In the section Certificate and Secrets and in the tab Certificates, I'm going to click on Upload Certificates, and now I can click on Select File in order to provide my certificate that I just created. It is this one, SP App-Only service.share. Let me click on Open, and then I'm going to add it. The certificate is added properly, and the expiration date, we can see that it is in the next 2 years. All good, the configuration is completed on Azure. Now I'll show you another thing, very important thing that you have to do to authenticate to the SharePoint REST API. Let me open again Visual Studio Code, and now here I have another PowerShell command, very important, to read the certificate. Because to authenticate to the SharePoint REST API, we have to provide the base64 format of the certificate. Now I'm going to run just these 2 lines of PowerShell. Okay, now I fixed the path of the certificate. I can run here by clicking on Run Selection icon on top. Now I have the value that I need, so I have a string base64 of the certificate. If I execute again and run for this selection, I can take now the base64 format for this certificate. Let me save it, and I will use it later. I am back now on my Logic app. I can add the last step to create the site. Let's click on Next Step. And here on Control, I'm going to select a condition, and then I'm going to verify if the selected option is equal to approve. Okay, if equal to approve, then we can start the creation of a new SharePoint site. Here I'm going to type HTTP because we have to use this action to perform a request towards the SharePoint REST API. The method will be a post, and then we have to add additional parameters. Now let's go on URI. I have everything saved here. This would be the URL. This is my tenant.sharepoint.com, and then this is the second part of the URL, which will target the REST API of SharePoint. Finally, in the header, we have to provide that we accept a JSON format as a response, and finally the OData version will be the 4.0. It is the updated one, and in add new parameter we have to provide the authentication. Now in the authentication I'm going to target Active Directory OAuth authentication, and finally in the body I'm going to add an example that I have. This is my body. We have to add some dynamic parameter here. I'm going to remove communication site, and then I'm going to set the title of the request. Here we can add as well the title. The site will be created by default in English. Then the classification, if you want, you can add this or you can remove it. The description, if you have, we can add, for example, the reason. Then the web template. If you want to create communication site, you have to provide this value. Otherwise, another one for team site. Let's create by default communication site. This is another important value. It is the site design ID. And this identifies the layout of your communication site. The classic one is this GUID, but you can find it in the documentation of Microsoft. I will add the link in the description. Finally, the owner. I will be the owner, but you can parameterize if you want this value as well. And finally, the last one, which is the web template extension ID, which is this GUID. Now let's move on the authentication part. As I mentioned before, you have to provide some information here. Now let's provide the tenant ID. I have this in my notepad. I have the tenant ID. Let me add it. The audience will be this one, tenantname.sharepoint.com. Finally, the client ID, which is this one. The credential type will be certificate. I have to provide here the PFX base64 format that I copied before. I have the line that I need. Let me select the entire string and I'm going to paste this in this field. It's quite long. Finally, the password that I added during the creation of my certificate. And then in the secret, you have to provide the secret as well that I have here. Always in my notepad, it is this one. Let's go on the right field, secret. Okay, all good. I have all parameters that I need to run this script, and we will see now if a new set collection will be created. Let's test out the entire process. I'm impersonating a different user now. I'm going to paste the URL of my form in Microsoft Form so I can start to add my information. I am connected as Diego Siciliani, and here I'm going to provide the title of my new communication site, which will be Global HR. Request the official Global HR portal of the company. I have to add the owner of this site, and will be Giuliano, and then I can submit this form. Let's click on it, and now this will trigger my logic app and the process will start. Now I'm going to check my Outlook to see if the email is landed. Here in my SharePoint list is landed a new request, Global HR, the official Global HR portal of the company, in status create. The owner will be Giuliano, and now going on my email, I have the approval request coming here. So I can see that the requester is Diego Siciliani. I can decide if approve or deny this request. This is the actionable message available in Outlook. Now I want to approve this so we can proceed and automate the creation of this new communication site in SharePoint. Let me click on approve, and now we are going to wait the creation, just some seconds, and all should be set up. Now let me open my Logic app. Previously I got some error because the email address was wrong, but I fixed it and the last run was succeeded. If I open it, I can jump in the last step, which is the creation of the SharePoint site. This is the URL of the new SharePoint communication site just created. Let me open it in another browser instance. I'm going to paste the URL, I'm going to open it, and voila! The new SharePoint site has been created. I am owner, I have access, and this is a nice way how you can automate the entire process and create automatically new SharePoint sites. It's time to talk a little bit more about iSpring. Here I am on iSpringSolution.com. More specifically, I am on iSpring Suite. To get started with this tool, you have to click on the free trial, and this will give you 14-day free, which is very great to test out this tool. Now let me show you what you can do in practice with this tool. Let's check this sample. You can create quiz. This is one of them. I started previously. I will click on no, and then I will continue this quiz. First aid quiz. You will have 15 minutes to complete a test. Start quiz. If a person's chest is not inflating during a breathing task, you should check their airway or pulse. Let's go with airway, submit, and this is correct. On top you have the number of questions, your score, timing. Pretty cool. Let me close it and let me show you another sample. You can even provide courses like this one, New Hire Onboarding Effective Start. Or there is a very actual example like home office, for example. Let me check here. How to get started working from home. How to start. Start course. Then let me click on next. How to work from home and stay productive. This is the kind of material that you can create with this tool. Let me show you in practice what you can do in PowerPoint. Here I am in PowerPoint right now. I just installed iSpring Suite and I have a new tab available with even more functionality. So I can record audio, record video, I can start a new quiz, I can create an interaction, I can create a role play. I have a lot of options here. Moreover, I can select more templates. Clicking on Site Templates, this opens a panel and here I have a lot of new templates available that I can reuse for my training material. I have even characters. So here I can reuse existing characters in this library. Furthermore, iSpring provides you a cloud space where you can create your training material and projects, so you can easily share with your users. Okay, we have seen in this video how to build a SharePoint self-service in order to request and then create automatically new sites. If you enjoyed this video, as always, please consider to subscribe, like, comment. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you next time.